Have you ever wondered why you keep falling for people who can't seem to love you back the way you need? It's not bad luck. It's not a broken heart destined to repeat itself forever. It's something much more specific, and much more fixable, than you've been told. Psychologists call it attachment style, and it forms before you even remember forming it. Back when you were an infant, the way your caregivers responded to your needs, consistently, inconsistently, or not at all, wired a blueprint into your brain about what love is supposed to feel like. If your needs were met reliably, you likely grew into what's called a secure attachment style. But if love felt unpredictable, distant, or conditional, you may have developed what's known as an anxious or avoidant attachment style instead. And here's the part most people never realize: those early patterns don't just fade away. They quietly shape who you're drawn to, decades later, without you ever noticing the thread connecting the two. This is why so many people with an anxious attachment style find themselves pulled toward partners who are emotionally distant or inconsistent. It feels like chemistry. It feels like passion. But researchers who study adult attachment have found something surprising: that intensity is often mistaken for connection. When someone is warm one moment and cold the next, your nervous system doesn't relax into safety. It goes on alert. And that alertness, that constant wondering, do they still want me, can feel disturbingly similar to falling in love, even though it's actually your body responding to uncertainty. But understanding this pattern is only the first piece of the puzzle, because knowing why you're drawn to someone doesn't automatically stop the pull. Stay till the end, because the next part explains something even more important: how to recognize this pattern while you're still in it, not just after it's already broken your heart. Picture someone with an anxious attachment style meeting someone with an avoidant one. On paper, it sounds like a mismatch that shouldn't work. In reality, it's one of the most common pairings therapists see, and one of the most painful. The anxious partner craves closeness and reassurance. The avoidant partner feels overwhelmed by too much closeness and instinctively pulls away to protect their independence. So the anxious partner reaches out more. The avoidant partner retreats further. And this cycle, reach, retreat, can last for years, each person convinced the other one is the problem, when really, it's two old wounds responding to each other in the only way they know how. What makes this especially hard to see is that it doesn't feel like a pattern while you're living it. It feels personal. It feels like this specific person is different, that this time it will work out if you just try a little harder, explain yourself a little better. Or wait a little longer for them to change. But attachment researchers describe this as one of the clearest signs of anxious attachment in action: the belief that love should require constant effort to be earned, rather than something that can simply exist calmly and consistently. If you've ever felt more at ease in a relationship that had chaos than one that felt steady and secure, this might be exactly what's happening beneath the surface. This might change how you see relationships you've had in the past, and the ones you're choosing right now. The good news, and this is something not enough people talk about, is that attachment style isn't a life sentence. It's a pattern, and patterns can shift. Therapists who specialize in this area describe something called earned secure attachment, where someone who didn't start out securely attached can, through self-awareness, healthy relationships, or therapeutic work, gradually build the same sense of safety and stability that securely attached people have always had. This means the way you've loved in the past does not have to be the way you love in the future. But before you can change the pattern, you have to see it clearly. And that means learning to recognize your own attachment style, not just in theory, but in the real, specific ways it shows up in how you pick partners, how you react to distance, and how you interpret silence. If this is helping you understand yourself or your relationships a little more clearly, take a second to like this video and drop a comment about which attachment style you think you might have. You might be surprised how many people relate to the same pattern. Because here's the truth that ties all of this together: you are not choosing the wrong people because something is fundamentally wrong with you. You're choosing familiar people, because your brain confuses familiar with safe, even when familiar is actually what hurt you before. Keep watching. It gets more interesting, because in the next part, we're going deeper into the exact signs that reveal your attachment style, and more importantly, the specific steps that help you finally break the cycle instead of repeating it one more time. Every attachment style has a moment where it reveals itself completely, a moment most people miss because they're too busy feeling the emotion instead of watching the pattern. That moment is silence. Not literal silence, but the space between texts, the pause before a reply, the gap after an argument. What you feel in that gap tells you more about your attachment style than any quiz or label ever could. Someone with a secure attachment style feels the gap and little distance without falling apart. Someone with an anxious attachment style feels that same gap like a countdown to abandonment, checking their phone, replaying the last conversation, searching for what they did wrong. And someone with an avoidant attachment style feels that gap almost like relief, a chance to breathe, even if part of them quietly misses the connection too. 3 different nervous systems, reading the exact same silence in 3 completely different ways. This is where things get interesting, because most people assume the anxious partner is the needy one and the avoidant partner is the cold one. But attachment researchers have found something far more nuanced. Avoidant attachment isn't about not caring. It's about caring so much that closeness starts to feel like a threat to independence, so the nervous system pulls back as a form of self-protection. And anxious attachment isn't about being desperate. It's about a nervous system that learned, early on, that love could disappear without warning, so it stays hyperalert to any sign of that happening again. Neither pattern is a character flaw. Both are survival strategies that made sense once, in a much earlier chapter of life, and simply never got updated. But this raises an important question. If both patterns come from a place of self-protection, why does the anxious-avoidant pairing feel so specifically painful compared to almost any other combination? Because it creates something psychologists call a pursuit-withdrawal cycle, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it in your own relationships. The anxious partner senses distance and moves closer to soothe the fear. The avoidant partner senses closeness and moves further to soothe a different fear. Each response triggers the other person's deepest wound at the exact same time, which means the harder one person tries to fix the relationship, the more broken it can start to feel. This isn't bad chemistry. It isn't proof that you're unlovable. It's two protective systems, activated simultaneously, working against each other instead of together. This might change how you see every relationship that ever felt like it was slipping through your fingers no matter how hard you held on. Stay till the end, because there's a detail coming up that most people never connect to their dating patterns, something about how your attachment style doesn't just affect who you fall for, but who you allow to stay. Here's something rarely discussed: attachment style doesn't only shape who catches your attention. It shapes your threshold for what you're willing to tolerate. Someone with an anxious attachment style may stay in a relationship far longer than it's healthy, mistaking inconsistency for a challenge worth solving. Someone with an avoidant attachment style might end things the moment intimacy starts to feel real, mistaking closeness for a loss of self. And someone who grew up witnessing unpredictable love might not even recognize a calm, steady relationship as love at all. Because calm can feel unfamiliar, even boring, when your nervous system was trained on intensity. This is why so many people, when they finally meet someone secure and consistent, describe it as strange rather than comforting at first. Some even walk away from healthy relationships, chasing the familiar spark of uncertainty instead, without realizing that the spark they're chasing is actually old pain disguised as chemistry. If you've ever felt bored by stability or hooked by someone who barely gives you consistency, this is worth sitting with, because it may be the clearest window into your own attachment story that you've ever had. If this is resonating with you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because recognizing your pattern is only step one. The real transformation happens when you learn to respond differently the next time that familiar feeling shows up, and that is exactly what we're going to break down next: the specific, practical steps that help you move from an anxious or avoidant pattern toward the kind of secure, steady love you may not have even known was possible for you. Keep watching, because this next part might be the piece that finally makes everything make sense.